Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, my custom is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things that I deem very expensive. Time. Time is a beautiful commodity. I watch people, and I know I misuse time for a great deal of my life until I learned to love it. I learned to respect it. I honored it. I just learned to uh, honor it, if you will. And as you begin to have those type of perspective, when you look at time, your life changes. The other is the journey. The journey houses tremendous amount of power because why? It created who you are today. And so Joanna is here, and we want to honor her and thank her for coming and sharing such expensive stuff with us. Thank you so much for coming by Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much, Ken, for inviting me. I'm truly honored. And your mission is very similar to my mission. We just use different tools, I suppose. But I'm very
I
honored to
agree.
be able to share this space with you.
Thank you so much. Tell the folks how you serve because I tell them it is an honored position to be because in order to be there, one must be humble, one must be broken. And when we are broken and put back together, there's some beauty within us. And so, how do you serve others while you're here on this planet?
Well, I love the way you set it up because that's exactly what happened to me. I was a very confident and kind of cocky person, and I knew best in many ways, and I was ambitious, and I had a job that was very much praised for its creativity, and but I found that journey to be very empty.
Yeah,
It was fun. I was younger. I was in a different part of life. But I started feeling that it wasn't enough. It was empty. It
yeah,
was not fulfilling me. I was doing something that other people deemed big and fancy, if you will. Um, and yet it wasn't satisfying me. And then I
yeah,
had children, and on the mission to determine whether I had to baptize my children. It was a bit of a struggle between me and my mother. My mother has since passed. But I started questioning, what do I think? What do I believe? What do I want? Aside from what I had been taught and indoctrinated into, if you will.
yeah,
So on this journey, I discovered some amazing tools with which I help people. So I fully align with you. I definitely see that the journey of pain doesn't have to be a struggle. If
yeah,
you allow yourself, if you do it in a so-called good way, positive way,
yeah,
you can have some beautiful, beautiful benefits.
yeah. I
And it
tell,
doesn't have to be a struggle. That's
yeah,
that's my whole point in all of this.
yeah, and that determines your perspective determines whether it's a struggle or not, and how you perceive it. I try to educate people that the darkness is there to uh, bring to light what's inside of you. You have a creator that has been residing with you while you were born, and you never needed that creator until the darkness is there. And then, if you are aware of that and you give the creator the opportunity to step out and give that creator that has been residing within you a voice, if you will, to begin to take control and to guide you, you'd be amazed what will happen to your life. One of the customs here that we do, Joanne, is to go back and start with the family. The family, I tell people, that location, we reside there for a few years. We maybe until we get to high schoolers and college or whatever, but it's only a few years in the span of time. And so we're there, but we have these folks that are Some, I call them scientists, but most of us call them parents. And now the parents are going to, they're going to put together their thesis and begin to teach you as to their belief and how you should start it believing and acting and so forth. Invite us to your family. How was that?
Well, I grew up Catholic. I had a mother and a father. They emigrated from one country to another. They emigrated from Poland to Sweden. So I
Hmm.
live in Sweden now. And and they had some very, very strong beliefs as to how life should be led in the best way. And they tried to teach me that. They tried to imbue that in me. And religion was part of it. And yeah, they did their best
Yeah.
to teach me what they thought would make me happy, if you will.
Yeah.
I had a brother, or I have a brother, and so there's the two of us. And yes, it's been an interesting journey to, as I mentioned, start questioning
Yeah.
these beliefs that have been imbued. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
I can understand because I became, and my listeners have heard me said this before. I became Ken Primus at the age of 35 when I had those questions with my mom and dad. There was a situation that took place, and based on that situation, and it had to do with my children, and I had to have a conversation, if you will, with my parents. And I realized that conversation was a separation from what I believed that I ought to live, how I ought to live, to how I believe that I should live. And I became Ken Primus at 35 years old, so I understand. So here
mm,
you are, this young girl within this.
congratulations.
Um, Thank you. It's been a long time. I'm 62 now, so I've grown up a little. So I understand that because it's a traumatic thing and it caused a disturbance within the family. And we separated for a while until we came back and mended the relationship. But those things are necessary for, um, and another one of my terminology that I love, it is necessary to become those type of
Mm.
situation. So here you are in this family that is highly structured within religion, and here's this young girl that is there. How did you? What did you see yourself in that household as, Joanna, with all of this structured religion that and belief system that you were growing up? What were you like in that mix?
I was surprisingly free within the structure. Uh, I found a way of doing my own thing in spite of the rules. You could say I cheated, or I made my way in a nice way.
Yeah,
I didn't rebel. I didn't have any sort of outbursts. I mean, sure, we had fights and normal arguments, if you will, but I didn't have any sort of difficult phase in my life. I tried to be a good girl, if you will.
yeah,
I tried to
yeah,
listen to them, but when I did feel that I needed to do it my way, I kind of just did it.
yeah,
And surprisingly, my dad wasn't much um, of a person involved in my upbringing. I was pretty much brought up by my mom. He went to work and did brought home the bacon, if you will.
yeah,
And my mother, she took care of us in the more spiritual or educational or moral stance. She worked as well, but she
yeah.
had this dual role, was my dad kind of let her do it.
Yeah,
Um,
part of the
but
programming.
I
That's the programming that
yes,
yeah, you know.
yes, he
Um,
did his thing and she did
yeah,
hers. And but I early on felt that I had some sort of a strong important thing to do. I just wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah,
But I did feel something, that
yeah,
something needed to happen.
that's interesting, Joanna, and I think it's good because I've done many interviews, and what you are talking about right there is a thread amongst everyone that has gone awry of the programming that they have established that we should go in awry, meaning that I don't want to be a part of that. What we find, but it's very interesting to see now this young girl beginning to learn how to navigate within those structures. And she's now finding her way uh, with this pull, this language that is inside, because that'll come back, because um, that is always that tug, because when we are not in our right position, we are unsettled. And so once you have that information here, it will walk with you in your life. So here you are, this young girl. You have collected some data that tells you that you are more than what the programming is saying. How did she look and behave when she got into high school, Joan? How was your relationship with others when you got into high school?
I had a small, tight knit set of friends. I didn't have a gang of friends.
Yeah,
It was easy for me to interact with people. I like people. I
yeah.
did like people, uh, but I stayed with a smaller group, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that was enough for me. I didn't
Yeah.
feel that I fitted in necessarily with
Mm-hmm.
the world. Already then, I needed some introspection. I didn't have
Yeah.
a difficult time being on my own, or staying or sitting with myself. Um, so very early on, I suppose, I knew that introspection was important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I think I was a little crazier in my high school days. I was in a rock band. I had moved
Ooh.
from United States, from Guyana to the United States, and I just loved rock. So um, I had my long hair because I could have braided my hair. I had the afro, so I braided it, and it was long. And I had this white bass guitar, and this rebellious guy that used to like pushing people's buttons. I
Aha.
hated the system, if you will. And so
Mm.
I would go to when we have to play on stage and stuff like that. I would have the most ripped up jeans that you could find. I would cut it up to shreds, and then I would have on a tuxedo shirt with a tuxedo tie. And people
Mhm.
would look at me and go, "What is wrong with you?" And I would tell them, "Contrast, the contrast," because I knew it would disturb their thinking, and I wanted to push their thinking because it was something that who I was and who I am to this day. So here you are, you have your pack, if you will, and your pack was sufficient for you to be able to function within the high school arena. You're now looking, there's this young girl growing up, she's entering in adolescent in the sense where we know they're about to kick us out, get out of the house. You're becoming an adult now. So you're looking into that world and they say, you have to become this adult. You're looking at college or not. What was your path and why did you pick it?
Well, I didn't pick it, turns out. I tried to pick it. I tried to decide, because that's who I was up until then. I was determined and kind of knew everything about everything. I thought,
Yeah.
uh, but it turns out that when it came to decide which college and which education and which structure I was supposed to be going into, I had a really hard time. The structure, the form, the title,
Yeah.
wasn't working for me. So at one point, I actually, like, I looked up. I wasn't very religious. My mom tried to, well, she took us to church every other Sunday, and
Yeah.
it was there, but I didn't feel it. I was questioning, why am I not feeling it? Why am I not feeling the God or the religion or
Yeah.
whatever it is that she's feeling, that
Yeah.
she is taking us to this? But spontaneously, out of some sort of desperation, I guess, I looked up and I said, what am I supposed to choose? What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And I received an answer for the very first time.
Yeah.
And I must have been 18, I suppose, at the time. 18, yeah, 17 maybe even. And I received this short little statement: make people happy.
Wow.
And I got angry because what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that, what job is that? What role is that? What title is that? I
Yeah.
wanted a title, you know.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was that a few weeks later, I awoke in the middle, in the morning,
Hmm.
and the day was gorgeous, and I was pulled. I felt like
Yeah.
something, higher spirit was
Yeah.
pulling me to church. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, me to church? Why am I? And I had this, and that was also a first. I
Yeah.
felt the pull. I felt, and so I said, fine, I'll go to church. And I went without my parents. It was just
Yeah.
me. And I'm thinking, what is going on? So what was going on was that I met this um, friend. Well, she was in the youth group, if you will.
Yeah.
And she told me about this opportunity. So I received a scholarship via this pull and this
Mhm.
opportunity
Sure.
to go to the States. So I
Yeah.
ended up on a scholarship in America. So I went through college in the States, and it opened up my eyes. I had new opportunities, a bigger vision of
Hmm.
possibilities, I suppose, because in
Yeah.
Sweden it's fairly um, not narrow-minded, but it's a smaller place of opportunities,
Yes. Yeah.
and thought processes and visions, and so yeah, I ended up in the States in college, and yeah, it had nothing to do with my doing, if you will.
And what was the study the that you took upon yourself in college? What area?
Yeah, I first I wasn't sure. Again,
Yeah.
I was still not sure what to do, but I figured, oh, great, college.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity to choose and still discover subjects that I didn't
Yeah.
have a chance to discover thus far. And I started as an fine arts and French double major,
Hmm.
and ended up as an illustrator. So I graduated with a bachelor in fine arts, but as an illustrator. So I
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
first to do illustrations on a color Mac. I was one of the first
Yeah.
to use the color Mac, and using technology, the tool of technology to create artwork. But it
Yeah.
turns out that that was not the final. Well, I don't know if I'm in the final place right now. I
You're
guess we're
never in the final
continuously
place.
evolving, right?
Yeah. You're
But
never.
yes, that was one stepping stone,
Yeah, you're never in the final place. That's one of the reasons why I have
right?
people say what they do now, because I know 6 months from now you'll
Mm,
be adding other things. Why?
somewhere
Because
else.
you've grown,
Mm,
and because you've grown that much, you are continually moving. Stagnation is one of the
mm.
enemies of personal development, I tell people. So
But
here it
that's
is.
if you let yourself. I'm sorry. That's
Go
I
ahead. Go
guess
ahead.
that's if you let yourself, because some people don't let themselves. They're
Well, no,
stuck
it's a
in
choice. Yeah, you
exactly.
make that.
If you
clear decision to do it.
exactly,
But I think,
exactly.
Joanne, I think the decision comes from a different place than the
Mm-hmm.
natural mind. I believe it comes from
Mm,
the subconscious mind, the
mm,
deeper inside individual. And when that makes a decision, everything comes to pass because that's
mm,
when we see energetically people begin to come into our space. Like you, here's this girl. She has, and I tell people be very careful because there's someone listening. So be very careful what you wish for, what you're talking about, because it may come to pass. Here you
mm,
are. You stood there, and this young girl said, "What am I going to do?" And there's a listener.
mm,
So now the listener has to begin to get in contact with you. And how do they do that? The listener gets in contact with you, that puts a little touch of thought, and that thought begins to expand. And you're like, yeah, I'll go to church. And then you walked into church, and here, once you made that decision, what am I going to do? And that you made that decision, I'm going to go to church. And
I
now
followed
you're,
it. I
yeah,
followed the calling or the nudge
yeah,
or
yeah,
exactly.
that
Yeah.
inside stuff. That's why I keep telling people
Mm.
it's not
Yeah.
here. It's this inside stuff. And so you
Yeah.
followed
Yeah.
it, and already waiting for you was something already set up, designed specifically for you. But
Mm.
the designer needed to get you there.
Mm.
And so
True.
he
True.
had this little nudge, and you said, okay. And you were
Yeah.
obedient to
And it
it.
was
You
a
walked,
big nudge.
yeah. And you were ushered
Yeah.
into a new life to begin. Here you are in the
Mm.
United States. You
Yeah.
are open to all of this newness of the States. I remember that when I came to America.
Mm.
And you're now looking at, but because of the country that you came from, the location, because I have the same thing, you're here amongst choices. But because where
Mm.
you came from, you had this kind of choices, and you were not able to expand at that time because you're not familiar with it. So you made the choice and you're in there. Now, as you are in school and you are looking at all of the surroundings of people and you've made your choice, how did you feel in this new country, new thinking, all of this stuff? How did this girl from Switzerland begin to
Well, I
see?
loved
Yeah.
it. I really loved it.
Yeah.
I uh, again, I was still the person that was um, self-assured and knew what she
Hmm.
wanted, or uh, not afraid of trying new things, and full of life, and eager uh, to discover, I guess.
Yeah.
S- Again, because I suppose I'm a bit uh, liberal and a free spirit in many ways. I had a hard time with that confinement, that
Yeah.
title. I couldn't get it to fit. But when I followed the intuition, and when I followed the flow,
Yeah.
and that little voice, which wasn't so strong, apart from those few situations I mentioned, that there were
Yeah.
other later on in life.
Yeah.
I had many more of
Oh,
those
yeah.
nudges and
Hmm.
pullings. But at that point, I'm in college, and I'm just having a youthful experience, which
Yeah.
was amazing, amazing.
Yes. I totally get it. So you have your experiences in life, and now you are getting older, and you're looking at, sometimes we're there at school, and now you are looking towards work. How did that come about? How did the circumstances came about to bring you into where you began and started your journey as far as the the professional, if you will? going into business?
Well, again, I was open to I had some sort of a vision. I was an illustrator. So I
Yeah.
started showing my portfolio in New York. So I would go to companies that would want to hire an illustrator for
Hmm.
an article or some design or packaging or what have you. So I started showing this portfolio to people. And because I had done my artwork on the computer, I knew
Yeah.
how to use the computer.
Yeah.
So in one of these meetings, I ended up talking to a design studio, and they needed a person to do designs,
Hmm.
desktop design. That when that was
Yeah.
new, so I got myself a part-time job helping them out. And
Yeah.
the idea was that I would help them out and then I would promote my illustrations. But of course, something else happened.
Yeah. As they began to expect more of you, if you will. And
Yes. And also, I was open to follow this flow.
yeah.
Again, back to the fact that I couldn't associate with any titles
Yeah.
and any formality. I was open to go with it. And if this felt good, well, then let me do this. And then when something else happens, then let
Yeah.
me go to there.
That's a
So all along, I've been very open to
yeah.
follow, I
Yeah.
suppose,
It's a
or
good
co-create.
yes.
Co-create maybe
I
is a
think that's
better
what it is,
description.
creating our
Mm,
life. And
mm-hmm,
I love the fact that you're saying it repeatedly about open. It is one of the hallmarks of an individual that is willing to do the work and to allow growth to come. And as I said, I'm open to becoming. I have no idea what that
mm,
means, but I know it's open to much growth, if you will. So here you are, this girl, she's working, making money, one of the first illustrators on the computer and a Mac, doing her thing. She's enjoying life. It's good stuff, you know. Okay, as you're there, how was life? I mean, were you satisfied and started going, yeah, I made it? What was it? Because I know that disturbance, something has to happen to awaken that disturbance that you had when you was this young girl that was placed in you. So what was it?
well, after a few years, I had done the dating game. I
Yeah.
had lived on my own. I had been independent, made money. Um, I started getting a bit dissatisfied with that. It wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And I suppose I was slightly more mature, I guess.
Hmm.
And there was different phase in life, children, family.
Yeah.
How should I do that? So I end up meeting a man from Britain. He's British,
Yeah.
and I figured that I guess it's time to go home. And actually, my dad said something. He's also passed now, but he
Yeah.
said, "Well, why don't you come home if you're not happy over there anymore? Come home." I'm thinking, come home,
Yeah.
back to little Sweden. Um, and of course, he was from Britain, which is next door. That's
Yeah.
what happened. I again followed along and figured, well, let's try that if I'm supposed to
Hmm.
be coming home to a smaller place. And again,
Yeah.
symbolically, I suppose, going inside as opposed to living the big life, which
Yeah.
is promoted, the big,
Yeah.
flashy money, fame and all that. I was again being guided inwards. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's what happened. We ended up moving to Sweden
Moving
or
back.
back to
So
Sweden
here
for
you are in
my, yeah.
Sweden, back in full circle, and you're
Yes.
now beginning to, um, as they say, shed all the things that you had in in big city, big country. Um, a lot of the things that you had in life is what the programmers tell us that you ought to have. And when you have those things, Joanne, you should have been ecstatic and happy and never, ever, ever had to
Exactly,
worry again.
exactly.
So, how come
Right.
all of these things would happen to you after having all this wonderful thing? And then you got a man with that too, and you're back in your country. Everything should be great. And I'm sure it was
Mm.
until. So, talk to us about your life once you get back.
Yeah, I suppose that once we got back, I was still in that mode of, well, okay, now I have to find a job, kids, okay, family, and it was still following some
Yeah,
sort of a pattern. But of course, I know I'm going to do it my way. So,
yeah.
but then the biggest um, first um, questioning of this whole system, of the
Hmm.
rules of life, if you will,
Yeah,
was when I was to baptize my first child. And my
yeah.
mother had this religious standpoint. Oh, it has to be done within, as soon as possible, preferably.
Hmm.
And I'm saying, well, but why? I don't go to church. I don't follow, the church thing. Why
Yeah,
does my child need, what am I going to tell my children? Why do we go to church? So
yeah.
I started questioning my whole, um, my belief system, who I was, who I wanted to be going forward.
Hmm.
So I suppose that was the biggest um, point of having to open a gate and discovering the field next to mine, a
Yeah.
new field, a new area and platform of existing.
So when you came to that place and you questioned the belief systems and so forth, where did you begin to now move towards when you started? You had that major encounter with mom in the sense where you have been awakened to, wait a minute, to you. As you were awakened to you, what happened as you began that new journey once you became awake?
Yeah, as I said, I was working in the design industry, so that's a
Yeah.
bit fancy, and the um, uh, art creation or marketing,
Hmm.
ad agencies, that has a bit of a glitz around
Yeah.
it. But I clearly felt that there was a big gaping hole inside of me, and that this wasn't fulfilling, in
Yeah.
spite of what people were saying about it and the image of it.
Yeah.
It was not working. It wasn't doing it for me. So I started again. I opened up and said, okay, now what?
Hmm.
And I was drawn into the alternative field, the holistic alternative breath work. I ended up doing breath work as my first modality in helping people.
Yeah.
So, and of course, in order to become a breathwork therapist or facilitator, you need to do some work on yourself. So there
And
was,
yourself. Yeah.
there were many steps. Yeah.
What did you
And that
discover,
was wonderful.
Joanne?
That was wonderful.
What What did you
Yes.
discover as you began to dig deeper inside and began to move the furniture, if you will, all the furnitures to do a house cleaning, a deep house cleaning? What were some of those hidden things that you discovered about you that you had to bring to the forefront and now utilize these tools that you began to become familiar with to help you with your excavation and your growth, if you will?
Well, I discovered many, many things, and it was basically therapy. That this
Yeah.
course, this training was self therapy, as well as learning how to help others and tools and structures. But it was a very humbling experience. It
Yeah.
was a very, okay, so I'm capable, okay, I'm cool, I've done things, I've traveled, I've managed to get around in the world. But there's more. There's
Yeah.
a deeper layer somewhere inside or on the outside. These dimensions that aren't necessarily spoken about. I mean, in church and Catholic Church, they were mentioned,
Yeah. They
but
never
no one
dig into it.
told you how to,
Yeah.
exactly. No one told you
Yeah.
how to reach them, or you were just, it was just assumed that you should hook into
Yeah.
it somehow.
Hmm.
Whereas in the alternative space, that wasn't so structured, and you there were no rules about when to sit and when to stand. And in
Yeah.
church and Catholic Church, there's a lot of now, okay, now it's time to sit, and oh no, no,
Traditions,
now
all the
it's time to
traditions. Yeah.
kneel, and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of rituals
Hmm.
that, in my mind, disturb the process of connecting with
Yeah.
the spirit or God or Jesus
Yeah.
or whatever you're trying to connect with.
Yeah.
So yes, this inner world started opening up.
Yeah. And as your inner world started opening up and witnessing things that you were there, and you mentioned the breath, um, one of the tools that you brought in. What other tools did you bring in as you began to learn more about different modalities by which you can utilize to help you to get um, um, a little more insight into you and to excavate and move things through so you can become lighter, if you will?
Well, I'm impatient. I still have that personality, that human part of me. I get
Yeah,
impatient, and I want things to be done efficiently.
yeah,
So as I was learning breath work, you're supposed to lay down, you have to have a space for this, and you're setting this whole scene up for the client, and it takes several hours, and then you're supposed to meet with the clients many more times, and this whole process, for my impatience, wasn't really jiving.
yeah,
So again, I reach out and I say, okay, this was wonderful, but I need something that works better for me, that
yeah,
works better for my clients, that
yeah,
works better for my personality, for my vision. I want people to be able to not struggle.
yeah,
It shouldn't take forever. You should. Surely there's something better.
yeah,
So that was my reaching out for.
yeah. I think the purpose, and I maybe, no, I think I'm right. I think the purpose for all of us to go through our journey is to, like you did, you go into the system of that time or whatever you're in, that discipline, and you go and you try their stuff out. But I believe it is we are called there to change it to us, to our personality, for us to bring in a different perspective of that same art, that same information, but we are taking it now and converted it to a place by which we are comfortable with. We know it, we believe it, because when we operate in it, there is for lack of a better word, they call it faith. We believe it because it came from us, so that when we administer that process that came from us, it will be 100 times more effective than when we started. And I believe that's why we go
Mm,
through our stuff, man, so that we can
mm,
address something to us, bring it into us, make it into a format by which we believe it and we know it works. And then once we operate in it, no one can move you from it. And people will know when they come in your space that this person knows exactly what they're talking when they're talking about this. and they can feel that energy and be attracted to it, versus where you're just stumbling because you were taught that you have to do it. Like in church, they tell us sit
Mm.
down, kneel down, get up. I went to an Orthodox church for a wedding. I think it was a Greek Orthodox church. I wanted to commit suicide in the middle of it because I was exhausted. I was like, man, this is a serious workout.
Up and
Um,
down and
yeah, up and down, doing this, all of us. Like, I didn't come for this. I was like you, I was impatient, and I had to learn. That was a tough day, I'll tell you that much. So here you are, you are taking something and you're converting it to you, whereby you are now going to become the servant from this. As you are assimilating all of that and making the changes, do you remember their first individual that you had an opportunity to watch it work on and got the results that you wanted?
the first, ooh,
Or do you
mm,
remember anyone when you started seeing it work and you, as like you knew it would work, where you would bring them into that
mm-hmm,
space much faster than
mm-hmm,
all of the other things that you were taught to do?
right. Yes. So after breath work, being impatient, I discovered EFT.
Yeah.
And as I turn around to my husband and I exclaim, "Oh, wow, look at this. Look what I've found." He
Uh,
goes, "Yes." And I said, "Yes. I found this great thing and it's shorter and doctors and nurses are talking about it, real people that have credit that, um, or they're credible, are supporting it." And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you know it?" He
yeah.
said, "Yeah." So he had been taught EFT from his uncle years ago when he was, a young boy. So
Yeah.
here we are, we've lived all this life together. And he's never mentioned it because to him it was something that you did in private.
Normally, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like everyone does it, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. So that was very fascinating. But what happened was that I started applying this and I started
Yeah.
seeing people being helped
Hmm.
rapidly.
Yeah.
And one of the first clients, I suppose, was this man, and he was having physical problems. He was very sensitive around his neck. So
Yeah.
the neck was like he couldn't wear shirts, he couldn't wear ties, nothing around. The neck was very, very sensitive. So he comes to
Hmm.
me, and we have one session. And in this session, I helped him come in contact with his father that was very domineering and very strict and rigid.
Yeah.
And when he came in contact with the father, the image, the memory,
Hmm.
it released the fear that he had every time the father showed up or called his name, or uh, this man, as a boy, had stiffened up and
Yeah.
tightened his,
Isn't that?
neck muscles
Yeah.
in order to not take on the unpleasantness that his father was exuding.
Yeah.
So he saw and understood and could release this sensitivity because he was still using that technique, when he met
Yeah.
his boss or his colleagues or
Yeah.
something unpleasant happened, he still was tightening up his muscles
Yeah.
around the neck subconsciously. So once you come in contact with that, you understand as an adult, and it just, I call it magically because I
Yeah.
really like magic, but I combine science with it. So,
Yeah.
but it turns out that you can release things very quickly, very quickly.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing though how people will carry it for years, and then when you have someone like yourself that will bring them to that awareness of what it is, they recognize what it is, and then it's able to move. I think it's as soon as they recognize it, Joanne, that it is
Yeah.
just waiting for them to recognize what that is. And it manifests
Mm-hmm.
in the body because it's, as we said, it's emotions that have been stagnated. And when one is aware of it, then you see the eyes open in there, and they're like, oh, and within seconds it's gone because they
Yeah.
actually recognize this is it, this is what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
that freedom, um, and I tell people it is only those that have been, I like the word, but let me put it this way, has been damaged a little, meaning that
Mm-hmm.
we have been through some difficult times. And because you've gone through some difficult times, you've learned a few things, you've asked yourself many questions, hundreds of them. And so when you are now in that position of a servant, and when someone presents to you, because you have asked hundreds or thousands of those questions through your journey, from the conversation, you're able to locate them and you know the question to ask them in order to bring that, oh, I didn't know. And it is a powerful, humbling place that one gets to be. And you guys that have been listening to us, and I know I always tell you, it's great to be a listener, but I always encourage you to transition to becoming a hearer. And if you heard what she said, it would have lit you up like a bright light, because that is the answer to your situation. You need to become aware of it. And so once you become aware of it, but you need a guide. I got one right in front of me. And so I'm going to, as we continue this conversation, I'm going to provide all of her information so that you can get to her, because you need a guide, um, because it's hidden. It's behind the curtains. It's under the furniture that you have hidden all over the place because you didn't want to deal with it. And because you didn't want to deal with it, sometimes you kind of forget where you hid that. And it became what we call a scotoma, or a blind side. You are not familiar with the location as to where it is. But someone that knows the questions that will ask you to remind you of where it is. And once you remember, it vanishes instantaneously. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about um, is joy. I read that and I was like, I need to talk to her about that. As you're going through your journey and you're walking through life, and your husband, I'm sure you guys started working and becoming even closer and more powerful as a couple, as you begin to, you're like, wait a minute, you had all this information all the time. Probably scolded him a couple of times too before you moved on. So here you are, you're gaining all of this wisdom, knowledge, you're seeing your system work that you put in place. As you began to see those things, how did joy come in now into this mix to the point where it got you and pulled you to write a book on it? How did that part of you came in?
uh, I was struggling with the next step. I was struggling with um, what what some sort of stagnation. Okay, so
Yeah.
now I have this tool. Uh, Again, what else? You told me I was going to make people happy. Is this really it? There, everything was kind of fine,
Yeah.
but there was like this. It wasn't a gaping hole anymore.
Yeah.
I was.
Hmm.
I
You're
love, love,
getting
love, love the
close.
feeling.
Yeah, you're getting
Exactly.
closer. Yeah, that's what it is.
I love the transformation when someone has you can see it in the eyes,
Yeah, the
the
awakening.
the the
Yeah.
release,
Yeah.
the ease, it's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And yet there was something, like a little something missing.
Hmm.
So I started reading, and I started going into near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And going more into the soul, because EFT, emotional freedom technique, and EMDR,
Yeah.
they're fairly structured. Of course, I can't follow that structure, so I'm always branching out.
Yeah.
um, and filling it in with adding even nicer things. And this was that thing that I still sensed was missing.
Yeah.
And so I started asking for it, and all of a sudden, as I'm reading and listening to people that are spiritual, not religious, so it's
Yeah.
not a full circle yet, as far as I know, um, but the spirituality aspect, that the thing that I had been missing from church,
Yeah.
I was still wanting to maybe get that. I don't know if I understood it, but the point is that as I allowed myself to connect, I said, okay, so let's talk then. If you are there, whatever you are, whoever you are,
Yeah.
well, let's have a chat. And sure enough, that's what started happening. I hooked into this amazing, amazing feeling of love. And at one point, I just felt that if this is the other side, or if this is heaven, then
Yeah.
please take me now. I'm ready. It was so beautiful. There are no words to
Yeah.
describe how amazing, and the vision, and the sparkly clarity, white ease. I was without a body and just filled up with joy. That was one of the first visions and experiences. Then I had another one that was maybe even better. I'm not sure, how to compare them, but yes,
So it was
yes,
necessary.
amazing,
I
amazing.
think we
Hmm.
call everything into our being. Again, you were, you asked the question, and as a result of the question, and again, I tell people, this part of you has to ask that question and mean it. And when that individual inside asks the question, you'll get it done. And I'll give you an example. Most people, when at the beginning of the year, I'm going to go on a diet, they'll say it. I'm going to lose weight. We call those resolutions. And people make resolutions all day long. But that doesn't get you anywhere, except when you make a decision. It's totally different. It's I made tons of different resolutions all my life. But when I made a decision to do something, it's amazing what takes place. We begin to take the corresponding actions to make that a reality. That's the difference between a resolution and a decision. And many of us
Yeah,
walk through life making resolutions, never making decisions. And so that's why we have someone like Jan here to help you to make decisions, because until you make those decisions, you will always have that circular lifestyle. And I've said this a million times, that my listeners have heard me say this. The reason why you are living a circular life is because you haven't made a decision. Period. Once you have decided something, I guarantee you it's just how we are designed. It is you who have decided, the inner powerful being that is you, that said enough is enough. And when you make that statement, things have already been happening. The designers have already been putting things in place. Joanne talks about when she was, I'm going to go to church. But that design, the information, that other person was waiting there already. Because if you had been that pull, that other person have to have that pull, have to have things happening in their life to bring them to that place with that information for you. And so there's design, guys, but you have to make a decision in order to hook into that design. And if you have been hearing us, everything she said was about that conversation. What's next? And when she connected, made a decision, it created an outcome in her life. And I've said it before that I have someone, I told you guys, you need a coach. We call them coach in one terminology. I like the guide. I like that because that's basically what they're doing, guiding you by questions to unearth you. You are hidden amongst some crippling beliefs. Those beliefs are anxiety, depression. There's so many names to them, but it cripples us. And you need a guide that is able to walk you through, that is familiar with the demons, if you will, and knows how to quiet them, how to tell them to sit, and while they are guiding you to who you are. And I invite you guys to be converted to listeners so that you can be escorted to becoming a servant. It is the most powerful place to be. John, I want to talk to
It
you. I
is.
want you to talk to them about your system, if you will. What have you designed so that when they call and you are now going to guide them, how does someone, what are they to expect when they make that contact?
I use, as a base, I use EFT and EMDR. And there are techniques, factual, practical techniques built in.
Yeah,
You use the physicality to reach the psychological parts of you. So that's EFT and EMDR. So that is a very efficient, or well, they're two separate modalities, but I combine them.
yeah,
And I add a spiritual aspect. I've actually been sent, because I don't advertise this at all,
yeah,
I've been sent people that needed help with past life experiences. They
yeah,
sensed past lives and they came here. And I don't say that anywhere, but
yeah,
universe knew that I was ready to talk to them and help them with
yeah,
this amazing tool and heal the spiritual parts, the physical parts, the past life parts,
yeah,
and I help people even let themselves see, envision, desire, wish, because oftentimes people are so
yeah.
stuck in these routines and their titles and in the amount of
Mm-hmm.
money they're making and can't lose it. And um, the structures really put a big it's like a prison for them. The structure becomes a
Yeah.
prison, and with time,
It's designed for
people
that,
find it hard
Joanne. That's
to.
what it's designed for.
So to break out is not
Yeah.
always so easy.
No,
Um,
it's designed
so,
to keep them there.
but with these tools, the practical tools, the physicality, the psychobiology, and the spirituality, and
Yeah.
the aspect of something more and bigger, that combination is just fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Guys, when I love when, especially when people put science with mixed it, because science and I don't like the terminal. I don't think it should be religion. Religion has no power. religion is about structures. And that's not where the power is. You
No.
know, I grew up in religion, and I saw that there is no power there. And it's all about controlling and keeping one
Yeah.
within the system. And if we step outside of that, they call you names and begin to um, lambast who you are and teach you that you're less than, not understanding that they are the ones that are restricting our growth, not us. So here you are, guys. I've got someone for you. Hear me talk about her. I love having it because when you mix science with spirituality and getting in deeper, it helps you to excavate things quickly because the data has been provided that shows that it works. And when you have that type of approach, if you will, and you see that she has always been one that goes out of the box and pull all kinds of stuff around and redesign the whole thing, that's when you have someone that is efficient in what they do, because that's why they go and pull other things, become efficient, they become more skillful in addressing your needs, addressing the necessity of movement that others will take you years. And because she's been able to do all of that, you will be able to experience your movement much faster and be joyful at it. I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a beautiful conversation, if you will. And then we're going to
Thank
provide
you.
everything for them to get to you because I want them to get to you because I have me a surgeon that is pretty good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ken. It's been beautiful to be here, and I so align with what you do and your philosophy and thinking. So thank you so much. It's been wonderful and an honor.
It has been for me as well. I